They say clear is kind. Well, a few years ago, I was the most unkind CEO on the planet. I had a CXO that was failing. Everyone saw it, the team saw it, and I saw it. But instead of looking in the eye and telling them the truth that they were missing the mark, I stayed silent. I told myself I was being patient. I told myself I was being supportive. I told myself I was gathering context. I wasn't. I was being a coward. I let the silence fester until it became a problem. Eventually, he didn't just resign, he raised a grievance against the company. Now, that failure didn't happen because I didn't know how to speak. It happened because I didn't have the guts or the tools to lead. And that was a day that I realized I don't just need better management tactics. I need a rewire, I need a coach. And that is how I started walking the path that led me to finding faith. Not that faith, this faith.
Hi.
If you don't know Faith, she is a former CEO and operator with over 2 decades of leadership experience. Today, she is a coach for the world-class coaching institute, Mochary Method, led by legendary CEO Coach Matt Mochary, where they help the world's best startup operators like OpenAI's Sam Altman, Coinbase's Brian Armstrong, and AngelList's Naval Ravikant to unlock their full potential. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the process of going from realization that you need a coach through to the decision criteria and process of selecting the right coach. So Faith, what actually is coaching?
That's such a good question. I feel like so many people who come and call us in the first place, they don't even know what coaching is. I'm glad you asked. I like to say coaching is like therapy in the sense that you have this protected space, right? Whereas, we can talk about anything and everything. You have full permission not to have all the answers. It's really confidential. Vegas rules apply. Coaching in its purest form, I think, is really just thought partnership, where the coach is really there to help you find your answers, right? Because I'm a big believer that you do have all your answers, and it's usually just a question of why you can't see them, right off the bat. And so coaching in its purest form just believes that and comes from that place. So it's really just holding space through thought partnership, helping you find your answers and figuring out why you're blocked, and then helping you make a plan to get where you want to go, from where you're starting to where you want to be. It's very much a heavy bias to action. I think the thing that's unique about Mochary Method in particular is that people come to us wanting coaching. They say they want coaching, but I think what they really want, specifically at Mochary Method, because we're a team of operators ourselves and founders and sometimes serial entrepreneurs, they want us to also put on the mentorship hat or the advisor hat or the consulting hat, so we can talk through a lot of the frameworks you and I have looked at together, right? How to make people feel heard, how to give good feedback, how to fire well, that kind of thing. So we can help advise and give tools that new leaders might not have, to help you make fewer mistakes along the way.
Yeah, that resonates with me so much, because one of the things that I have always found really challenging, and it makes me question my sort of growth mindset a little bit, is when I've looked to other people and I've sort of taken a challenge I might have had to somebody who I see as somebody that might be able to give advice. I always just found myself they were trying to context correct. So they would hear the situation and then they were trying to use that situation and find a parallel of their experience and trying to advise me based on their own experience. And I always felt like going, that's great advice, but and you just feel like you're going, that's great advice, but here's a reason why it won't work, or here's a reason why it won't work. Whereas what we have, which I think is kind of how you described much more eloquently than I could, of I present a challenge and that I can find the right way forward for myself, but you give me the tools and just we kind of find that way together.
Yeah, exactly. Because I don't know about you, but I feel like the hardest part about leadership is that there are so many shoulds hanging over you at any moment in time. Running our company, I felt like I didn't have an MBA. I'd always managed people and trained people from a young age, but I read every book there was on business and management and how you were supposed to do things. Right. And ultimately, over the 11 years, I think where I really got to is that it's about finding what works for you, for your leadership style, and in particular, what works for your company, because it's always different, isn't it? Right? What works for MEDDIC wouldn't necessarily have worked for us, or maybe some parts do, but so there's never one universal, one size fits all thing. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of it, is really kind of magpieing together the different approaches and finding what really, really clicks for your team, for you as a leader.
We have this saying, this guiding principle of like best practice unless we know better. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about there, because like, you bring to the table what you've seen before, kind of if it's like game theory where you've been through the process before and you've seen like, okay, well that worked or that didn't work, so I won't or will do that again. But I think where a coach can really help is kind of just asking those questions to kind of almost like role play those different scenarios. What would happen if this did happen, and how do you feel about that, and that kind of stuff.
Totally. And I think what's nice about it too is like, I got a lot of gray hairs running our company.
I do as well, but you can't see them. It's an HD camera, but you'd have to really zoom into this.
Yeah. And I just was, when I left that company, when we sold, I was like, I cannot have gone through that for nothing. Like, surely there's a way to help other leaders make fewer mistakes and get fewer gray hairs in the process, And I think that alongside, again, what's very unique about the Mochary Method group is the fact that we have seen, like, I passed 3,000 hours of coaching CEOs in July, which is crazy, right? That's a wild amount of context. You kind of start to see the matrix from all of the companies that we work with. And so when somebody starts talking about like, oh, our team doesn't have urgency, right? Maybe that CEO is really dialed into the urgency bit. But what I'm hearing is like a whole like sequence of first principles, right? Like the root causes of that thing. Like, oh, is there psychological safety in that org? How are you guys talking about your goals? How are you helping your team juggle their priorities, right? What kind of feedback culture do you have there to have radical candor at play in your org, right? And so because we see what really works in some of the most successful orgs from super early stage to very, very successful unicorns, we can really lean on that, like grounded theory research almost, and just pull it in for you to help you. Yeah.
Well, that's that game theory thing again, isn't it? It's like you've seen this film play out many different times. There may be different actors, and it's a bit like Groundhog Day, but put someone different in the lead role, it might, it goes a different place. But if you've seen all those different scenarios play out, you get a huge amount of context.
Yeah, totally. And then it's always fun, again, how you can like take all of that and see what part actually is unique to you, like where the puzzle piece kind of slots in for MEDDIC in this case, as opposed to another company.
Yeah. So you obviously, if you've done 3,000 hours, that's a do you count how many hours we've done together?
No, I haven't, but I should.
We should figure that out, because I feel like I have a percentage of that. But
yes, you do.
So obviously I'd imagine similar to how we first came to work together, the process is someone's looking for a coach, and then you have like a first kind of conversation. When someone is in the shoes that I was in, when they're kind of saying, are you the right coach for me? What's the kind of things that they're looking for, not in the coach themselves? What are some of the signals, I guess you would say, of somebody that, if someone's listening to this, that coaching may be right for them?
That's a great question. Well, I'll start with what I look for, because I think that might help answer the question. Usually, if my people come to me and they say that they want coaching, I'll ask them to tell me like a little bit more, like what is it that brought you to coaching? Right? In your case, you were very clear on some of the things that you wanted to work on. And usually just by hearing firsthand, like, oh, these are the goals I want to target, right? Or these are the things that I want to get better at, or this is where our company needs to improve. That already tells me that they have at least a decent amount of clarity to launch from. And then once we get into the conversation, the thing that I'm really paying attention to there's two real factors I think that matter a lot. So for anybody who's looking for a coach, kind of like when you find a therapist, I think the most important thing is that you really feel understood by whoever it is that you're talking to. Because I think if you don't have a fundamental sense of feeling felt, it's not necessarily going to set that relationship up for the greatest amount of success in that thought partnership, Because I think the thing that I don't know about you, but the thing that I know I need to be super vulnerable and to tell you honestly where I think I'm getting in my own way or where I might be messing things up is that sense of safety and like, you're not going to judge me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that real sense of like synergy almost is what I'm feeling for with my people. Do I feel like we're connecting? And then the second thing is like, is the growth mindset at play? Okay. Yeah. Because I've had people come my way who I felt maybe I wouldn't be the most effective coach for them, either because they needed a different style than what I bring, or because when they started talking about the problem that it is that they wanted to solve, I would ask like a usual question like, oh, have you tried this before, right? Or tell me more about this thing. And what I'll sometimes find is that people are very set in their ways and they're not willing to consider alternatives. And that's to me shows that someone's kind of operating from more of a fixed mindset. And sometimes if I call it out, people can kind of break through that and be like, oh, you're right. I should consider other ways maybe of approaching things. Like maybe there is something I haven't tried before. Like I'm willing to hear it. But it's like that willingness to consider like that, maybe you don't know all the tactics or techniques, or maybe you might not even have all the context within your own company yet to be able to make the best decision here. So it's really growth mindset and feeling felt by your coach. And then I think one of the reasons that you and I chose to work together is because I think you were looking for someone who'd also been an operator before, right? So I wasn't going to come at you with a bunch of academic stuff. It's like, no, you've been boots on the ground before in like a bootstrapped way too. So let's I feel like you've been there, and you get me in a way because of that. So there's something like that you can look for. There is the International Coaching Federation. I'm one of the coaches that actually has her credential through the ICF. So if that's important to you, and it usually is important for larger like enterprise companies, for people to have that credential, you can look for that or ask for that. I strongly recommend that you ask your coach what kind of training they've had, because I think there are moral and ethical boundaries that you should be aware of. And if a coach, I think you'll get a sense in the conversation too, if they don't navigate that well, it's just something you should look out for, I think.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So something you said there was around there's normally I was wondering if there's like a lightning strike that happens. So in my case, there was definitely like a lightning strike. We talked about that in the opener. Something had happened. I was like, I need to fix this.
Yeah.
Or just a sort of a general realization. Does there tend to be, is it kind of is it a blend? Is there a mix of both people that like something happened, I realized, or like I've come to realize, which does it tend to lean towards one side or the other?
I see a little bit of both, honestly. When I started working with a coach, I did it because I felt like I was getting in my own way a lot. And I was just like, I've tried everything and I'm just hitting this wall repeatedly and I don't know how to get past it. Then I needed someone with just a fresh set of eyes and ears and a brain, who could just tell me where I was going wrong and where I was someone up in a helicopter being like, you're walking through the maze wrong, go back, turn left. I need that, So some people come in with that. And then sometimes, people will come in hot, with like, oh man, having the hardest time with this person on my team. And like my co-founder and I are at absolute loggerheads. Like I'm worried one of us is going to have to go, and it's intense. And so often we can just like dive right in and talk about it. That often will be, it'll cause a little light bulb, if you will.
So that would mean that maybe the first session is quite often you have to kind of hit the ground running a little bit, because if someone's coming with a strong situation like that,
a lot of urgency. I will often just like set aside the niceties of like, oh, tell me more about your company. Like, what size is it? Like, what's your stage? Are you funded or what? Like, tell me about your leadership team. I have some like basic questions that help me just kind of get the lay of the land. And so sometimes someone comes in with like, no, I have an extremely urgent and pressing issue that I have got to get help on today. I'm like, okay, cool. Talk to me. Yeah. Let's just go.
And I think that talks to one of the main additional benefits that I didn't foresee when considering taking on a coach, which is that for me, and I think this talks to most CEOs, or pretty much all CEOs, unless you've got a co-CEO, but even then it's difficult. It's kind of a lonely job. And I've got like the double whammy, because, a lot of people have co-founders, which is someone that's, been there from day one. You've kind of walked the path together. Yeah. I don't have that. And so I'm, lonely CEO. There's no one else for me to talk to. And then I don't have that co-founder as well. And I think one of the benefits that I didn't foresee is that there are sometimes very difficult situations, scenarios, whether they're personnel issues or other things that, financial issues or things like that, that you could come across. And you can't talk to your team about it because all kinds of reasons that are obvious. And so having that person that's not just a shoulder to cry on, but also has the experience to know they've walked the walk, they've stood in your shoes, but also, like you said, they have that wealth of context, they've seen this storm and then they've seen the sunshine the other end of it, being able to just play those roots through with you. That was a unexpected benefit, I think, that I've enjoyed from working with you. Yeah,
that's awesome. Almost like normalizing some of the pain that you go through, right? And I think.
But there's difficult conversations, if you have, as I think anyone by nature of actually, using their precious time, not wasting, using their precious time to tune into something like this.
Yeah.
Therefore, they are going to be a performance-orientated individual. And so in performance-orientated organizations, not everyone makes it, not everyone fits in. And so you have to make some really difficult decisions a lot of the time. And, that's where we've spent a lot of our time, on those topics. And I think I don't know where I would have been if I didn't have someone to kind of just run through those motions with, just to kind of say, hey, am I being like sensitive, or am I being like, am I overreacting, or like, and just having someone to, and I think the beauty of a coach, going back to what I said very early on in this conversation, is that you're not trying to take your context from your world and bring it into my world. You're just trying to coax out from me the things you already understand, because we've worked closely together, to kind of show me the path forward from there.
Totally.
Right.
I think this is where it's appropriate to call this founder therapy, is because I do feel like I bring in some of that. Yep. But it is like, in a way, because like Matt Mochary likes to say, fear and anger give bad advice. Right? One of my favorite catchphrases that he uses. And so I'm here to lend you my nervous system in those moments, right? Where like you might be super like, I don't know, hijacked or just like confronted by something. You're like, am I making sense? Am I making this up? And I can help you fact check it and be like, no, like I don't think you're crazy. Actually, it makes a lot of sense because of X, Y, and Z. And we've seen this before, and it sounds like this is happening too. And I feel like just by helping to like take the temperature down a lot, like it can do so much. Yeah. Like it's the worst feeling to feel alone, and it feels so counterintuitive, doesn't it? Yeah. Like that was the loneliest I ever felt, was when I was CEO, and I was like surrounded by like, I don't know, 200 people.
Right.
I was like, how do I feel so lonely? Yeah. But you're right. It's just some things it's not appropriate to talk to your people about, or your partner at home. It's like if somebody else just really gets it.
Yeah. And I think this point perfectly bridges like transitioning from the conversation of looking at why you should consider coaching to the coach you should consider yourself, because we've kind of highlighted this idea that a coach can be someone that can be kind of anything from an accountability partner to an advisor, but that has context, and rather than give someone else's advice, pulls your own advice out of yourself. So how do you find the right coach? Because one of the things you said was right early on was around not feeling like you'd be judged. Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. But I'd also say that one of the strengths I think about our relationship is that I've said this to you many times as like, oh, you would have been proud of me, or you're not going to be proud of me, but here's why I did what I did kind of thing, which I wasn't just doing before. So I would just like run forwards like a bull in a china shop before, would take the action. But at least even when I think you're not going to be proud of me, I've paused to go, Faye's not going to like this, but I might at least try and explain myself to her as why I still did the thing that she might not have approved of. Yeah. And so I think that there's something that's not necessarily judgment, but that's kind of a rich relationship thing where it's like, I almost want to make you proud. Like it's like a different kind of coach. It's like, hey, put me in, coach. Let me
go. Yeah.
So how does somebody find a coach that they can kind of be vulnerable with, but also still carry that kind of respect almost, where I respect your advice so much that I don't want to show you that I've ignored it, but still feel confident enough, vulnerable enough to not feel like you're going to judge me for maybe going back on something that you've coached me not to do.
Yeah. Oh man. And one of the things I want to point out here is a lot of the times when you do come in and say like, oh, I don't know if you're going to like this, it's often actually a good thing that you did it. Okay. Right. And so I think it's just to call that out too, that a lot of the times feeling safe enough even to be like, I'm not sure if this is actually something you would agree with is actually really beneficial. So finding someone like that, I think, again, just kind of going back, it goes back to, feeling felt, and also just kind of knowing, this is a funny thing. I haven't really found a way to like put this into the business terms, but you know how in life they talk about there being love languages, and where there's sort of like, you need like quality time with somebody, or you need like words of affirmation. I think if you're aware of what makes you feel supported, or what you really need from any kind of partnership. Like you can think about your friendships, right? Your best partnerships at work, if you have a romantic partner, what works really well about that partnership, or with your family, wherever you have the healthiest relationships in your life. If you can reflect on what it is that those people give you, I think that helps you kind of dial into the qualities that you might be looking for from a coach. Because some people come to me, they're like, I need you to be on me like a drill sergeant. I'm like, all right, I can do that. You know, like I will. I'm just like, I'm going to hold your feet to the fire. And he said, you committed to doing this thing. You didn't do it. Why?
Yeah.
Like, and then other people are like, no, please don't do that. That's going to like make me freeze up or something. Like instead, just what I really need is just the space to talk through this.
Yes.
I'm like, cool, I can do that too.
Yeah, and I bet you probably can tell from the personality, because we've never had that conversation. I've never said to you, I need you to be like, hold me accountable, or I need you to kind of like be like understanding or open or support, anything like that. So I think it's probably a good sign of like two people finding the right balance between each other.
Totally.
I think I would probably really would struggle if I felt like every time I went to like say something I was having trouble with, if you were to go, well, actually, if you paid attention in session 32,
No.
we wouldn't be having this conversation, just Whyte, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
that's interesting. What's some other things that you think of if we flip what we would call in our world of MEDDIC decision criteria, right? So one of the things that we teach our clients is that decision criteria, so a customer coming to a vendor, a partner, a consultant, whoever it is, will come in with a decision criteria. And for me, when I was selecting a coach, you said something himself, it's like, I want someone that's been an operator. Obviously part of it was someone I just vibed with, and that's kind of like, we call that relationship decision criteria. I wanted, like someone that had been from a bootstrap environment. So those are kind of my decision criteria. And so anyone listening to this will have their own decision criteria of the sorts of coach they're looking for and what they think was the right person for them. But what are some of the other part of decision criteria that we like to teach is that the vendor, the consultant, whoever, should have things that they think that their clients should need, right? So it's a little bit different in consulting, because if you're coming from, let's say, if you're a technology vendor, you, by nature of working for that vendor and by talking to a prospective customer, you should feel like we're the best fit for them. Otherwise, you shouldn't be talking to them, right? Which I guess is the same for you. You're not going to be trying to win a new client who you're like, I can't help this person. We're not going to work, right? But in the situation when you've got someone in front of you and you're like, I think I can really bring, my best to this person. I think I can really help this person. What are some things that you would want to inspire them to consider in their decision criteria as things that they may not consider, but when you typically see any kind of client, you're like, these are things that really do lead to success in a coach-client relationship?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. One thing is, I think if you've never run a company before, especially, less a team, one thing that you might not be familiar with is how much evolution happens there. Because if you've taken something from 0 to 1 and you're trying to take it to wherever, 100 million, 100 billion, moonshot it, whatever it is, I think one of the things that you don't always know right out the gates is how much not just the company is going to evolve over time and what that company needs from you is going to change, but therefore how much you need to evolve and keep evolving as a leader. And so I think that's one of the things that I feel like our team does really well, is just helping people to check in, like, well, what stage are you at right now? And what stage is your company at? And how are you or aren't you stepping into answering the needs that the company is asking you to meet? So that's one thing for sure, is just how your own evolution as a leader alongside your company. I think there are times where people come to coaching wanting just the brass tacks of operation. And what I find, especially for my PhDs out there, is that they also need a lot of help with the interpersonal dynamics. And that's the stuff that, I've nerded out on for like 15 plus years now, just as a dork, trying to like understand what really helps people get the most out of these high performing teams. And so I think if leaders can be open to not just talking about the business brass tacks of like, how do you like work well with your CFO, right? Or how do you make sure that your meetings are as efficient as possible when you do have them, but that you also leave space to consider how you are or are not creating a culture. Like, I always say it's kind of like the fascia in your body that holds all the organs and the tissues and the bones in place. It's what it helps the system work. I see a lot of founders and a lot of first-time CEOs completely disregard the importance of culture. And I think it's actually one of the most crucial components to the most successful teams. Is that they are, like, you look at NVIDIA, they are so they prioritize or they prize their culture so strongly, and it's one of the things that's consistently set them up over their 30 years now to be where they are.
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, it's not like culture doesn't get talked about a lot, but I just feel like I very rarely hear, people talking about culture, and I think, oh yeah, I really resonate with that. Yeah, we kind of have this saying of like, it's all about like ping pong and like Taco Tuesday. That's like what people seem to think culture is a lot these days. And even though it's kind of become a bit cliche of those things, I still think that's how people are measuring culture. And I think, I think the way that people try and counter that is they go, well, we're a family. And it's like, really? Like, no, like I'm sorry, but like, I as a little brother, like in the family should have been fired every month. I should have been on performance review my entire family life as the annoying little brat brother I was. And I'm sure my brothers would have loved to fire me. So we're not a family, because if I gave that performance to any company I work for, I would have rightly been fired. So, this idea of the family thing always makes me laugh.
But it's such a good point, though, because it's not a family. It can feel like a family if you really nail the culture.
Yeah.
But people have signed on. They've agreed to work for a company. They've come in to serve a purpose.
Yeah.
Sure, you can make an argument for how that's true in family life.
Yeah.
But I definitely think it's important to see that difference. And people call them soft skills. And I both agree with that, of like the people skills and the culture skills being soft skills. Yeah. But I also think, sure, we can accept that if you think that the hard skills of business, like the business brass tacks, need to be complemented by the soft skills for it to be a complete company, then let's look at it that way. But I would just say, like, please, to all the like founders out there, like, please create the space to at least look at that. This is one of your superpowers here, I think, is culture, So, but yeah, make space for that.
So that's actually a very nice segue to a feature I've been looking forward to introducing, which is truth or trash. So I'm going to ask you a question, and you have to talk to the audience and tell them whether the answer is truth or trash. It's going to be a statement. So
this guy.
First one is, Faith, can a CEO be friends with their direct reports? Truth or trash?
Oh boy. I'm gonna say true, but with an asterisk. Truth. I think it depends on the CEO. I think it's really important to reflect as a leader how close of friends you can be with the people that you work with and still be able to hold them accountable and to have uncomfortable conversations and guide them as needed. So I think maybe one way you could look at that question is it friends or friendly? Because I think the danger, let's put it this way, I think the failure mode of being friends with your team is that often, to me, comes from a place of just really wanting everybody to like you. And that's a really tricky place to be, because I think that as the leader, if you really just want people to like you, you're probably not going to feel that comfortable saying no or holding them accountable or calling them on their BS, when they're not following through on something. But if instead your goal or your intention for how you want to lead is that people, you are very friendly with people, you do call them friends, and you set the expectation from the outset that, listen, part of this working relationship or this working friendship is the ability for us to talk about the awkward elephants in the room, right? To have the difficult conversations. And I probably will at some point need to tell you that you are wildly off base. So I think I would invite every CEO to really reflect on that of, where is the line for you? Where is it that you need to have a boundary that you won't collapse to be able to prioritize what's best for the company first and foremost, not giving in to what the people are asking for always if it's not in service of ensuring the company is healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I totally relate. My one of my biggest challenges has come from exactly what you've been talking about, where I had talked about it before. We had a friend in the business that wasn't performing, and led to whole bigger problems, probably that I don't want to put the blame on the friendship, but may have, certainly would have eased if we were just acquaintances that hadn't started our relationship as friends and then became colleagues.
Yeah, agreed. This is where I think if anybody hasn't read Radical Candor before, it could be a very, very helpful resource to you, because it's all about how you can make sure that you are allowing yourself to care personally and also challenge your people directly, which I think is the sweet spot of any friendship, honestly, any relationship in your life. So
yeah, I had ruinous empathy for days in that situation.
No, same.
Yeah.
I got us in a lot of trouble with that, so I feel you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, the second statement for truth or trash
yes,
is if you need a coach, you have to already be failing.
Wow.
Truth or trash?
Truth or trash. I'm going to go hard on the trash on that one, guys. You didn't, wow. In order to need a coach, you already have to be failing?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I don't think so. There's a great quote, and check my notes here. I love my girl, Brene Brown. Brene, you're my birthday twin, as is Herbert. I know.
Yeah.
I cry. But I want to give you a shout out here. She said that leaders are the only people in the world where high performance is expected and a coach is not normative. I think this is such an important concept because you've heard me say this a million times. I'm sorry, I sound like a broken record, but for anybody who's never heard this before, I think where we get into trouble as CEOs or as leaders in general, if you're not a CEO, this applies to you, is that we forget that we are running the most ultra of marathons when you're running a business, right? You are not, if you think about any sport out there, how much do they practice? How much rest do they get? How much training do they do with their personal trainers at the gym and stuff outside of game day? Mm-hmm. And then there's more rest baked in. But a lot of the times, and especially with startups, there is no stopping. You are running this marathon every single day for years and years and years. And it's about sustaining high performance at that level. And the fact that it hasn't quite been normalized until recently, I think something's shifting to have a coach for the longest endurance sport there is. I do not think that getting a coach means you're failing. If anything, to what you're super passionate about, I think it shows that you're an A player. Right. Because you mentioned earlier, oh, I don't have time. Mm-hmm. I think you said something like that. That might be one of the reasons why somebody might not choose to sign up with a coach. And I think that might actually be a sign that you're slipping into a danger zone as a leader, because if you're not making time for you to have protected time to think, you're not going to be prioritizing the right things.
Yeah, there's this fun maturity of leadership thing I've noticed, which is, and I'm going to be honest here, I think I fell foul of it earlier in my career, where it's you associate your busyness with your level of importantness or I don't know, quality of your what you're doing. And it's you see it, I see it now, and sometimes people will post on social media, they'll post a screenshot of their calendar, and it's there's no gaps. Mm-hmm. And they're seeing it from a perspective of, look how great I'm doing. And I'm how are you doing anything? Because I don't, if you just go from meeting to meeting or whatever it is to whatever it is, I don't know how you find any time to grow, let alone provide value because you just have no time for anything.
Yeah.
Naval Ravikant, who is was actually, I think, part of the reasons why, our paths would have crossed, because I, fell into that world and all that good stuff of the Mochary Method. But, if there's anyone that's I don't think he even has a calendar.
I know.
If I don't want to do it, I don't do it. Yeah. And that for me is surely, if there's this sort of evolution of how people see their time, mm-hmm. and where they apply themselves, that's surely that's the God mode. That's the gold standard, right? Yes. That's the end boss of leadership, is that you're just you're completely in control of your time and every minute matters, and therefore you apply it accordingly, rather than just cramming your calendar full.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you're calling this out too, because I think one of the things that you're saying is when you focus on time, mm-hmm. If you are hyper fixated on how many hours your team is putting in, mm-hmm. I guarantee you're counting the wrong thing. Because what we've talked about is you're looking at the outcome.
Yeah.
Right? What is the outcome? What is the result that I'm trying to achieve?
Yes.
busyness, I think, is like hustle culture and toxicity as its finest,
Yes.
right? It's not about you grinding. I did it. That's why I'm like, I'll call myself out here. Like, this is how I burned out, was believing that that was how you add value to your team, to your company. It's just by going nonstop. And yes, there are times in startup life where that is the name of the game. You kind of have to work like 60-hour work weeks because there are just not enough people to get everything done. But I think just being really mindful of like, what is the value that you add, right? And what is the outcome you're actually trying to get to? And how are you sustaining yourself?
Yes.
And allowing yourself to take breaks, because if you don't take breaks, you're going to see diminishing returns. There have been so many studies on this.
Yeah, and I also think that in our world, anyone listening to this, creativity is the most one, if not the most important thing, one of the most important things. And I think people think creativity is colors and paintings or like art or that sort of stuff. And obviously that's a very visual way of it expressing itself. But, you know, the best engineers are the most creative engineers, you know, and that's something you don't associate typically with creativity is like lines of code, right? But it's there. But you can't, I don't know if there's probably some of this is said this way more eloquently than I ever could. But the way I see it is you can't, the time and creativity don't run parallel to each other, right? And so if you think that you take a creative pursuit, whether it is, you know, say something in the arts or something writing code or anything in between, there is no time measurement that you can have that. And that's why we have 10x engineers. That's why that concept exists, is not because they're working 10 times as hard, quite the contrary, right? You know, they're solving problems 10 times smarter, 10 times more creatively, right? Because something as like sort of binary as code, that shows you how impactful creativity can be. So that's a great example, I think, of that sort of time management thing there. I have one last truth or trash.
Okay, I'm ready.
This one might be controversial. Truth or trash, all founders should be fired by Series B.
Yes, this one is solid trash again. But again, with an asterisk. I love that. Okay. Founders should be fired by Series B. I think there's a world in which that statement absolutely applies. And I think, kind of like I was talking about earlier, I feel like every company, it's kind of like a kid, right? It's born as a baby and then moves into toddler phase, and then it's like, you know, a child, and then it's a preteen, a teen, and then it's an adult. And the company does the same thing. If a founder is contributing to the company's continued growth and health and success, I don't think there's a world in which that founder needs to leave, right? I know a ton of CEOs that have started 0 to 1, and they've stayed on into the millions and even billions phase, because they have been able to not just grow alongside the company, but it just makes sense for them to be involved still. I think the flip side of that, where this might be true, is the asterisk, is that if, as the founder, like one of the CEOs I worked with, his name's David, he says, you're a founder once. Like, you start the company, you founded it, hooray, you're a founder. And now life as a CEO begins, or whatever your role is. And so I think that if you find that as the company is growing and you're approaching Series B and you feel like you don't even recognize it, or you don't know how you're going to bring any value to it, more because it needs something different from your skill set, or more importantly, it needs something that you in your zone of genius can't provide it or don't want to provide it, then yes, fire yourself as CEO and find somebody else.
Yeah.
You know?
It's, for me, it's like, I always just look for the evidence, and it's like, name me a company that like is a household name for their success and size right now that doesn't have the, or I think there's examples, to your point, where maybe the founders have taken a voluntary seat back, like Reid Hoffman at LinkedIn, for example. I'm pretty sure he probably didn't get fired. He probably decided, right, I can pass over to, I think Jeff Weiner now, I think, took over. But, you know, we go through them, Bezos, Zucks, Altman, you know, like wherever you
Naval.
look. Naval, wherever you look, there's the founder is still there in place. And are arguably even more so impactful where they are a visionary founder. So, you know, like Airbnb, Facebook, those types of things where, you know, it's not just, you know, I guess like Dropbox is a good example of that as well, where it's something not every day people are thinking about, but, you know, if you think about this, where those stories came from and you hear the founder stories of how it's just a visionary idea that probably wasn't a category and now is. And they're still out there crushing it. You wonder how many household names there we don't know about because over-enthusiastic boards have perhaps acted too soon.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
So this reminds me of a thing that you and I have talked about that I'd love to introduce, if that's cool.
Please do. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So I think I'm just going to draw a little graph here and then we'll show you on screen too. But there's two axes. And in the beginning, you're doing everything when you're 0 to 1, right? And then over time, you're moving more and more into what's traditionally thought of as a CEO's role, which is kind of being the keeper of the vision, right? Guiding the team, making sure everybody's in the same boat, rowing in the same direction toward the same objectives, right? The reason I bring this up is because I think when you think about the value that you bring to the company and the role that you play for your team, I know I had a huge existential crisis when I had trained up enough of my people to do what I had been doing, and I was doing less of the hands-on doing and more of the vision keeping and checking with my people, unblocking my people, making sure that they were really dialed in with clarity on what we were trying to do. I felt like if I'm not the person who is doing the doing, what is the value that I bring? And I thought that maybe the company didn't need me anymore, when in fact it needed me more than ever. Yes. And I was just being called into a new way of bringing value to the company. And so the point of this graph is that over time, you can see how you are, as you have people now reporting to you. And then with another level, you have people reporting to people who report to you, right? Your value is in the work that you're doing as the vision keeper and the strategic thinker, right? And as the guide, the leader for your team, less the hands-on doing.
Yeah. Yeah, totally makes sense. We talked about this recently where I almost had that crisis moment we had a leadership offsite. Yeah. And I remember sitting there and thinking, hang on a minute, it's been like an hour and I haven't said anything. Yeah. And starting to think like, oh no, like, am I not needed anymore? Like it's a funny feeling to have. And then an even worse feeling was like, oh, I hope they think I'm checked out because I'm just not saying anything. Because normally I, have things to say. And I had to kind of like stand back and, we talked about it and I'd be like, like I'm deliberately doing it. There was opportunities where I definitely could have said things, but I felt like it's probably better if I don't, for the greater good here of like letting people have space and all that good stuff. But it was a tough realization I had to kind of go through, and I kind of had to give myself a little pep talk to be like, oh, it's not really what's happening. I'm sure it's like, there's more to it than this. Looking myself in the mirror and saying, okay.
Your fear was really loud in that moment, right? Yeah. And I feel like that's like the greatest gift though, to pull back and be like, okay, fear, fair. This is new. Yeah. I haven't experienced this before, but let's like celebrate this moment. Yeah. Right? Because this is the thing you've been working toward. You have this incredible team around you who is immensely capable, and you've achieved that like mind meld with them, and all of your leaders know what they got to do and they're doing it. Like, what a moment to rejoice. Yeah. Like, I can't tell you how many times I sat there in my office just being like, well, been working on that for like 7 years. High five self. Like, nobody else can see it. Only you can see it, Yeah.
Well, that's another good reason to have a coach, because you can be like, hey, I was feeling like this. Like, I think I might be being irrational here. Like, can you maybe just like hear me out here and see it from your perspective? And that's like a good thing, which I think is like, we've kind of covered the first sort of why, which is like, why should you consider taking on an executive coach? And then we talked about like the second why, which would be like, well, how do you find the right, why this coach in particular? So why coaching them? Why this coach? The final one is like, why now? Because we've talked about busyness a lot. We've talked about, obviously as an executive, whether you're a CEO, wherever you are in your career, you are busy. You've always got, like, by nature of the role, there's always going to be things that are high priority. And so how do you fit in this time to look for a coach, but then spend with a coach? And I think we've talked about it as being almost like a force multiplier. And I'd love to hear you expand on that of like, if somebody's thinking, well, I'd love a coach, but I'm just not sure if the time's right now, or if I've got the time to find one, or what would you say to that person?
Yeah, I'm glad. It connects a little bit with that graphic, just a little bit. I think so often when you're in the thick of it, you feel like you don't have time. And I think one of the most critical things you can do as the CEO is just make time. Because if you're working in the business all the time and you're not giving yourself just small opportunities to pull out of it and come out to the 10,000 foot view and take things in from the highest possible level, which only you can do, your company's going to suffer, you know? I've had a lot of people that I work with just say, like, I'm not at my best when I'm in back-to-back-to-backs all the time. I don't feel like the best CEO for this team when I allow myself to do that. And so I think one of the gifts that coaching gives you, even if it's every other week, like we do, you know, for like, what, an hour 20, you have that time protected at the very least that you've committed to just giving yourself what you need to show up as best you can.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's an interesting thing because like you make a commitment to coaching and a coach and, you know, there's a commitment, you know, obviously you make a commitment to me, but I make a commitment to you as well. And there's been times where I've kind of seen that Thursday afternoon session approaching, I've been like, what shall I talk about? Like there's been no, you know, lightning strike, as I said earlier, or no event that's happened in between the last conversations. And there's never been a part of me where I've been like, well, we should just postpone it or anything like that. Because what typically happens is we get into talking about previous events or initiatives, and then we just go deep in there. And I think that's the point there of having that person that can be someone just to have the depth and expertise to kind of just sound things out, bounce ideas off of, and just kind of, if here's the goal, you're going to get there much faster if you have someone to sort of run the plays with almost.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like I think sometimes the blocker is how much you have to invest in the coaching too. I know for us, like cash was really tight at the time, but we did it, my business partner and I, and in hindsight, I think it was one of the best things I could have done because I was so focused on like, well, what is the ROI on what this coach is going to do for me? And then at the end of the day, it ended up being like unquantifiable because so much happened and rippled out in a great way just from having made that investment. And I think in large part because my business partner and I, we were just protecting our time and our focus and our energy, just even if it was like once a week or every other week.
Well, we're bootstrapped, right? I mean,
exactly,
I'm saying you know this, but like I actually don't think you know this part, which is that I reduced from my salary your coaching fee.
Oh, wow.
That's like that. So I literally said, okay, I need to make a commitment to this, and not just because we're bootstrapped. It's not like, you know, like having to like, what's the saying, like rob Peter to pay Paul kind of thing. Yeah. There wasn't. I mean, part of it is budgeting, right? It was like unbudgeted, something I wanted to do that was unbudgeted, but also it's like a commitment. If I really believe in this, then I should like put my money where my mouth is. And you know, I guess like a true litmus test would be like, how long? I was trying to figure this out. Is it like, how long have we been working together now?
I feel like it's almost 2 years.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I was thinking almost 2 years. So, you know, 2 years on, let's say, if the ROI wasn't there, then, you know, I would have given myself a nice pay bump. Like, sorry, Dave, I'm actually going to go out for a meal, you know, a couple of meals a week or whatever it is going to be to make up the difference or whatever it is sort of thing. So, yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I never said that to anyone before, but that's a thing. So.
But it really underlines that you ultimately, at the end of the day, are making an investment in you.
Yeah. Yeah, but also to your point, it's in the company because I feel like I kind of not from the perspective I rate myself as a force multiplier, but I definitely can be the bottleneck.
Yeah,
so
can't we all?
That's how I see it. Yeah. So, okay, so we've kind of gone through. You know, it's actually a framework that that we know and love, which is these 3 whys, which you can use for anything. By the way, we've used it here as a framework to talk about considering coaching. You can use it for any kind of purpose. If you're a founder, CEO listening to this, you can use the 3 whys as a way to position. So you could say, if someone's considering working with you, they should first consider why the category, why the thing that you offer, and then the second why is why should they consider you, and then the third one is why now. So we've gone through those from a perspective of why should you consider coaching, why should you consider what should you consider in the coach you work with, and then why should it be your top priority now. In summary, because we've talked about each of those points, if I can put you on the spot, how would you summarize, why should someone consider coaching?
Mm-hmm. I think if you are a leader and you want to make sure that you are leveling up and finding your blind spots, frankly, I think that's one of the best reasons to work with a coach.
Love that. Second, why should they consider the coach themselves?
I think you're really looking for a trusted thought partner that is going to be, in a way, in the trenches with you as you keep going, because none of us get through this alone.
Yeah, perfect. Love that. And then the third one, why should this be a priority?
Like now.
Yeah.
I feel like what better day than today to just get started,
Yeah. And I think that force multiplier thing is so important. Like if you think about every decision you make, every challenge you're dealing with, if it takes you X% less time to come to the conclusion, if you can make an X% better decision every time, that time compounds infinitely.
Yeah, you're really just reducing the inefficiencies and getting to that hockey stick moment sooner.
Yeah, love it. Yeah. So where can people find you, Faith?
If you go to MocharyMethod.com, you will see all of us coaches there. And then you can find us, like I'm on LinkedIn if you want to look there. I'm not a big social person, but MocharyMethod.com. Yeah.
You're not a big social media person.
No. Oh, yeah, you're right.
Very antisocial.
Very antisocial. Very. I'm horrible with people.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy. This was fun.
So if you've worked with a coach or you're considering one, drop your biggest question or hesitation below.
And I'm here to help answer any of those questions.
Yes.
Bring it on, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.